Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to another edition of the Toxic Happy Hour party with your co-host PUBLORD.HODL. When we're done with technical difficulties on his side, mine are finally solved. We are toxic towards scams that delay the adoption of global sound money. We have a very special guest today, YouTube boss, finance and investing content creator and analyst, Mark Muss. Welcome to the show. And what are you drinking?
Yeah, so I am drinking my same thing I drink every single morning. I guess I do intermittent fasting on a daily basis. I drink Bulletproof Coffee, and I kind of drink one in the morning, maybe 6 a.m., and then I drink another one right about 10:30, 11, and then I don't eat until about 2 or 3 o'clock. So that's what I'm drinking.
Awesome. Puppy, what are you drinking? And thanks for making it, Puppy.
Well, yeah, let me know how this connection is, or I can try a different phone. However, you know me, I like my IPA after work, a nice beer or two. Then we go home.
Right. And absolutely. And because both Mark and I are representing SoCal today, I've got my California cup here, representing California. Mark, this coffee, you said it had a special name. Is that is it a special coffee, or is just your name for having coffee?
No, so it's coffee with butter and MCT oil. So I put I make up a big batch in the morning, like, I don't know, 20 ounces. I put in 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of MCT oil, which is kind of the best part of coconut oil. Blend it up, and then basically what it does is, I mean, there's no carbs, no protein, so it's just straight fat that your body can run off of. It creates this amazing clarity, focus, energy, and I try to pretty much go all day without eating and just stay in that super hyper state of focus and energy all day.
I don't know about you, Puppy, but I want to be like Mark. So, Mark, if you can send me that recipe, or maybe I guess I can just re-watch the show here, or is it some special ingredients I need to find out?
Well, Bulletproof Coffee, there's actually a website called, it's called Bulletproof, just bulletproof.com. Dave Asprey, he's a hacker. He's a biohacker. He's the one that kind of came up with it. And you can go right onto his website and buy the stuff off bulletproof.com. Or you can just get coffee, mix it with butter and oil. So if you want to know more about the recipe, just go to his website and buy it from him, or try it on your own. But I've been doing it. I committed to try it for 2 weeks because I read about this mental clarity, like this brain fog gets lifted and this light, crazy energy. And I'm like, wow, I want that. So I committed, but I love breakfast. What am I going to do? So I'm like, I'll try it for 2 weeks. And it's going to be hard. I know it. It's going to be tough, but I'll commit to 2 weeks. And that was about 7 years ago.
Right, and it's been a great experience. I can tell since then.
That's why I keep doing it.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we had the difficulties in the beginning. We got a late start, and I know you have a hot end. So let's dive right into it. What triggered me in a positive way was I saw your long tweet storm thread about the failing or the falling trust in the United States dollars. And as Bitcoiners, this is, of course, something that we're extremely interested in. It's a hot topic because I guess it's kind of a measurement of potential collapse of fiat currency and replacement by a Bitcoin. Can you please tell us, well, maybe before you dive into that, if you tell us a little bit more exactly about yourself, what you do on your channel, and we'll have the links once everything is edited and brought up to speed. A little bit about what you do on your channel, what kind of content you offer, and then you can dive into the topic, please.
Yeah, we'll flow all the way right into that. So I've been like a full-time investor for well over 20 years, 25 years. I started buying real estate when I was 18 years old, fixing and flipping it. Hundreds of properties, hundreds of rental units. I invested through the dot-com boom in the late 90s, started internet business in 2001 at the bottom of that crash. Couple businesses, Fortune 500 exits, continued with real estate investing. 2008 came and wiped me completely out. I knew how to make money. I didn't know a lot about the investing world. I didn't know about the Vegas casino that the Fed has created. So I had to really dive deep. You know, I grew up, I'm a dirt bike racer. I've broken pretty much every bone in my body. So I'm used to just kind of like, well, let me just try that again. And so I had to figure out, okay, what can I do to make sure this never happens to me again? I learned something, I learned something called about a wealth transfer. And there's a principle that says money is like energy. It doesn't disappear, it transfers. And so what that means is when I lost all my money in 2008, someone else got it. And I wasn't happy with that. Like, what? Someone took my money? Well, that's never going to happen to me again. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be on the receiving end of the wealth transfers. And so I've basically spent the last dozen years figuring out how to be positioned on the receiving end of the wealth transfer. That led me to gold. I had to figure out what this casino was about, why the money was the root of every problem that we have, why we need to go back to a hard, sound money. Became a gold bug, obviously went down the Austrian rabbit hole. Led me to Bitcoin. At this point, I believe Bitcoin is the only hope that we have for the future at this point. And so my channel, as you said, I have a YouTube channel. I do a couple videos a week, put out content on YouTube and on Twitter as well. And my whole focus is on why. Why is Bitcoin important? So I talk about all the problems that we have because it depends on what country you're in. A lot of people in the United States don't necessarily understand that our money is a problem. So I focus on the why. Why is that? And so I'm talking about the Fed. I'm talking about the money system. I'm talking about interest, debt. I'm talking about all those things that always lead back to Bitcoin. But I'm not one of the guys who's going to sit there and break down how to connect the wallet to a CoinJoin. And like, I don't talk about what. I talk about why from a high level. And so that's obviously led me to why Bitcoin is important. And then what is money? What backs money? Why would Bitcoin be better? And things like that, which brought us to this trust issue that you want to talk about today.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna give the word to Pubby also because he finally came back in. Yeah, what I want to say on that is, Bitcoin need geniuses all the way, and we all have different skill sets, and you're killing it in this part of explaining to people why, which is really, really important because we gotta. I mean, the big issue now is that 99+% of the population doesn't even understand that we have a problem with the money, as you're saying, and that we need sound money. And that the current system is a cancer to society, the central bank. So, but Pubby, welcome here to this extremely technically challenged live stream. Unfortunately, I think people were hanging out on the other one. Not many have found their way back over to this link. And Mark, I'm sorry for that because that is really part of the toxic happy hour experience. But slowly they're coming in. Pubby, over to you. Oh man, no sound. Okay, this Mark.
Well, I'll just keep talking.
yeah. Okay. Sorry, Pubby. You're not on mute. Keep talking. We'll see when we get you in. This is, I don't know. Is it a special day or something? Because everything is going wrong technically today. But Mark, let's just give the word to you, and you carry us.
Yeah. So, instead of talking about how it works, what it is, how consensus, how security, all those things, the what doesn't matter if we don't know why, right? And so that's what I focus on. And one of the big things that I've been watching for a long period of time, and I've probably made a dozen videos on the dollar losing the end of the dollar. Let's call it that. And the end of the dollar means a bunch of different things. But what I look at is like, first, if you understand what money is and what the dollar is. And so a lot of people will always ask, well, what backs Bitcoin? Bitcoin's backed by nothing, right? And I don't really want to answer that question. Obviously we can, but if Bitcoin's not backed by nothing, what's the dollar backed by? And so a lot of people might still think that it's backed by gold, or a lot of people probably didn't even know it was ever backed by gold. Most commonly, people say it's backed by the full faith of the government. Maybe the next biggest answer is it's backed by the military. Well, maybe it's oil, the petrodollar. And I would say it's not backed by any of those things. What it's been backed by is trust. It's always been backed by trust. And so Venezuela has a military, but that doesn't mean people want to use their currency. As a matter of fact, it's like littering the streets, and people don't even bother to pick it up because they don't trust it. They don't trust the money. And so you might have the currency, but if nobody will take that currency from you, then you're not going to use it. And so I argue that the dollar is built or backed by trust. We have a fractional reserve banking system. So we basically created all this debt off of your money. And to illustrate how fragile this trust is, if about 1% of the people in the US or in the US banking system, if 1% of the people lost trust and said, I don't think these banks are well capitalized. I think that I'm probably better off getting my money out of the bank and putting it in my mattress or my home safe. If less than 1% of the people did that, it would collapse the banks. That's how fragile trust is. And I made the point through this tweet thread that we are losing it right now. And I gave some illustrations as to why, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that illustration, the graph and the M1, that's what we want to get into. I think, first of all, here now, I want to welcome Pubby back for like the 5th time on the 3rd link. Thanks, Restream. I'll try to like blame them instead of myself. Pubby, welcome to the show. We can hear you.
Sorry, I got a couple phones I'm trying to work out here, and my microphones. You can hear me now?
Yep, I do.
Oh man, so this I'm Mark. This is the one show I knew sooner or later we would have some huge guest on this show, and we would fall through as the amateurs we are, and it's happening. It's happening today. No, I'm just kidding. Well, so yeah.
If you want, I'll frame it up on how we're seeing the actual trust disappear right now before our eyes. If you want, I can dig into that.
Yeah, so just to support what you're saying or give you my take of this, I moved out of my home country of Denmark many, many years ago. And this currently what's happened the last month or so or couple of weeks is I have seen the price of the dollar collapse to the lowest level the last 1.5 decades. But yeah, so if you can please carry on with the golden nuggets.
Yeah. So basically, the points that I made in that Twitter thread that I put together is that crowdsourced information has been proven to be very reliable. And so what we mean by that is we've had multiple experiments done where you have a county fair and you have a jar full of jelly beans, and people are asked to write down a guess of how many jelly beans there are. And when you take all those guesses, you average them, or you add them all together and then average it out, you get surprisingly close. They've done it with like a steer, guess the weight of the cow, things like that. It's better when it's like farmers guessing, so they're a little bit more of experts than the average person. And so we've tested this over and over and over again. And the point that I made is that the largest crowdsourced information we have, well, there's several, but one that's been brought to our attention is the betting markets. And so through this election process, we saw that the betting markets were way more accurate on the bets or the outcome of the election than the actual polls were. And part of the reason why is the polls are just grabbing subsets of people, subsets of data. Two, the people that are saying what their polls are don't really have any skin in the game. So they might say, hey, I'm voting for Biden, but they're really voting for Trump, for example. Maybe they won't vote at all. And so we saw that the betting markets were way more accurate because those people were way more engaged and they had skin in the game, meaning they were putting their money up where their mouth was. And so we saw how that was way more accurate. But the biggest betting markets in the world, the biggest crowdsourced information is the actual markets, the stock markets. All right. And they basically are the same thing where people are putting their money up to bet what will happen in the future. They're betting that this stock will be higher in the future. This gold future will be lower in the future, whatever it may be. So they're basically betting on the future with their money. And so the markets are this giant crowdsourced information that tell us what's going on in the world, right? They tell us that. And it's extremely accurate. Now, a couple things I can throw out. So for example, global warming is going to ruin the world. The seas are going to rise and it's going to wipe out beachfront real estate. That's what they tell us. AOC said in 12 years, the world's going to end. Okay. That's information that's being pushed, it's being taught in schools, etc. What does the market have to say about that? Because and I live on the beach. I live 3 houses off the beach, and homes in my area have doubled in the last 3 years. So the market is not pricing that in, right? That's one way to look at it. But what I was showing specifically in this tweet thread is what the market was saying about the dollar. And the dollar has been continuing to lose value as measured by the Dixie, the DXY. It's the strength of the dollar measured against other currencies. And it's been losing value. And I argued that, or I didn't argue, but I showed a chart that showed that the dollar has fallen so far and so fast that it's become a problem. Now, we've seen the dollar fall just as far and fast back in 2016. But back in 2016, it was due to something called the Shanghai Accord. It was all the countries got together and agreed together that if the U.S. didn't devalue the dollar, the other countries were going to have a debt crisis and would default. And so the U.S. agreed to devalue the dollar so the other countries' currencies would strengthen and they wouldn't default. So that was a coordinated thing. Well, this time, we're seeing the dollar fall way faster. As a matter of fact, it's fallen about the same distance in half the time, but not due to a coordinated event. As a matter of fact, it's happening at a time when all the currencies are crashing at the same time. So that's a really, really, really big difference. And in the markets, the speed at which they move is often a very important indicator. And as I said, this is moving very, very quickly. So that tells me that the dollar is crashing, and why. Again, we had a coordinated event in 2016, but now we don't know. Why is it crashing? Now, this is where we go from facts to a little bit of opinion, right? Now, this is my opinion as to why I think this is possibly happening. Again, what did I say that the dollar was backed by? It's backed by trust. For example, nobody trusts China. That's why their markets aren't doing that big. That's why the world doesn't use their currency. Everybody knows you can't trust China. Everybody knows the books are cooked and whatever, right? So their currency doesn't get used.
Amen.
Yeah, so their currency doesn't get used. But everyone uses the U.S. because the U.S. has the rule of law. The U.S. has consistently over time built up that trust. And if anybody knows anything about trust, if anybody's ever been in a relationship, a girlfriend, boyfriend, or been married, you know that it takes a long time to build up trust, and it can be lost in an instant. Okay. And so the U.S. has built up trust over a long period of time, but we know that trust has been falling. There's been countless surveys done, and we can see that trust has been declining rapidly over the last several decades. But today, we have a massive, massive issue going on. And it's obviously back to the election process. Now, regardless of which candidate you want to win, it doesn't matter, in my opinion. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm for the party that gives us less government and more freedom, whatever that means. But regardless of who you want to win, it doesn't matter. The fact is that this election is completely full of fraud, or at least fraud allegations. At least fraud allegations, okay? Now, again, if you've ever been in a relationship, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, so are you saying that this significant fall in trust to the US dollars is basically triggered by the election? I just want to establish that.
Well, I laid out facts, and now I'm going into the opinion, right? So we know factually that that trust has been waning in the United States. We know that. There's been countless surveys done over the last several decades. Anyone can go to Google and find those. And so we do know factually that trust is waning very fast. We also know that the dollar is falling. So those are facts. Now, why is it crashing even harder today? I'm going into a little bit of opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't have a fact to back this up. It's my opinion that this event is causing a bigger problem to the trust that's already so fragile. The trust that's already been in steady decline is getting rattled even more. And again, regardless if you believe there's fraud or there's fraud allegations or there's real fraud, it doesn't really matter. Again, going back to if you've ever been in a relationship or you've ever dealt with trust, if my wife said, "Hey, who are you talking to on your phone?" and I hide it, it seems like I have something to hide. I'd be like, "Babe, look, I'm talking to my mom," right? I would prove it. So whether you believe there's fraud or fraud allegations, it doesn't really matter. The fact that they're not willing to open this up and go through it and prove that there's no fraud makes it seem even worse. Okay. And so what I believe is the betting markets, the markets are seeing what's going on and crowdsourcing the data going, holy crap, the US has some serious problems. We believe that there's massive fraud, massive cover up. We believe that we can't trust the US like we thought we could. And we're seeing it priced in the Dixie right now.
Wow, it's awesome. It's I mean, I think I mean, you have a lot of fantastic points, and I agree with everything. I would say, so what I have been seeing or thinking is the reason for this falling trust is maybe but you can tell me about this, that US has been increasing or diluting the fiat currency faster, and I was taking that for part of the reason for the drop, and not necessarily the election fraud, although that definitely does not help.
Well,
But
I think it's both. I mean, I think it's
Okay,
both,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, all this goes into trust. So, for example, when my wife starts doubting me, she's going to look for a bunch of signs like, Mark's never here at night anymore. Mark takes off for a weekend. Oh, Mark looks at his phone and doesn't show me, right? So there's a bunch of different things that she's looking at to make that opinion. So I would agree with you. Yes, people know that we're printing to infinity and beyond. In addition to now they can't even trust the information that we're getting, right? So it's like all that.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And one thing, well, I also want to hear your opinion about. So I heard yesterday. I was watching naturally a couple of the YouTube streams you've been on, Swan Live with Preston Pish. I also saw your YouTube with Raul Pal, so one of the things that came up in one of those was this. I think you brought it up, the new Joe Biden, that buy something with, what was it, 60, 70, 100 trillion that was going to be printed. That is basically unaccounted for, which I can't believe that's true. How can you do stimulus or like a green packet or whatever that is worth, like, where you're going to print that much? Because I remember last year when I was talking about fiat currency compared to Bitcoin, fiat currency total global value, all the fiat currencies accumulated, was 100 trillion. And you're telling me that US is going to print an amount of fiat currency that is equivalent to like the total global fiat currency supply last year? Or maybe it wasn't you.
I mean, something like that, right? So Bernie Sanders and AOC and that kind of side of the party, they put together this Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal says we're going to kill all these industries and we're going to spend a bunch of money over here in the renewable industries. Now, it's so big and so expansive and so aggressive, we don't really know. But there's been several analysts that have gone through this, and the estimates are pretty wide, but they say in order to do this, what's in this plan, it would cost somewhere between 40 to 100 trillion. It's a big number. Now, Biden says that he's not backing the Green New Deal. He's calling it the Biden deal, but it's basically the same thing. So somehow in that party, they plan on, spending over the next, several years to decade, somewhere between 40 to 100 trillion dollars. And so then back to your question, you would ask yourself, well, shoot, if there's only about 3.5 trillion of income tax receipts, income for the government, and we're at a $3 trillion deficit, so we're already spending double what we're bringing in. Our national debt is, 28 trillion, pushing 30 trillion. How do we get 40 to 100 trillion to do that? So that would be the question that would be asked. And of course, I think we probably know the answer. We created out of thin air. And then, of course, as we created out of thin air, all the existing dollars become worth less and less and less.
Right. And yeah, that's the law of nature. If you dilute something, it will be worth less. And if anything, it's absolutely true with currency. So we finally have Pubby in. Pubby, you, of course, you've missed the bombs from Mark so far, but I want to bring you in and welcome you to the show.
Thanks, Sam. So yeah, I heard the first part. I think Mark was describing when he realized early on the money he lost was picked up by somebody else, and then you find Bitcoin, and especially when you talked about energy, because to me, Bitcoin, why Bitcoin or what makes it different to me is, I don't know if this is the first law of thermodynamics, but energy, matter can't be created nor destroyed. It's just transferred. Well, that's only true in Bitcoin's case, because there's money. When you have fractional reserve, there are millions and billions and trillions that are sometimes created that aren't necessarily transferred, but they never existed in the first place. When you lose that money, sometimes it just goes to nowhere, because it was fake to begin with. It was just this bubble that no one really owned. I'm taken back to the little scene in The Big Short. It's Fugazi. It's helicopter money in the air. You never let it land.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's a nuanced argument, but let me explain to you kind of how this works. So, in 2008, I was doing real estate development in Southern California. I had one building in particular. It was a mixed-use building, commercial real estate. It was, this is a 4 or 5 year project, underground parking, et cetera. I put it on the market for $12 million. I turned down an offer at $11 million. But then all of a sudden, the market just started diving. In Southern California, where I'm at, the market lost about 60% in 1 year. So it started dropping. I couldn't sell the building for anything. I wish I would have taken the $11 million. I didn't. I think what payment was like 180 grand a month. I couldn't keep up with it. It went back to the bank. So I lost it. I lost all my wealth I had put into that building. The bank took it back. The bank sold that building for $4 million to somebody. Today, that building is worth $18 million. So I lost my wealth and somebody else got it. But it's to your point, the wealth was destroyed. Yes.
Right.
But it's the policy that creates the wealth transfer. So what happens is, and we've seen this in 2000, all these years, is the policies of the Fed and the government cause these market crashes to happen where I lose my money, where the average people lose their money, but then the government policy then reinflates it for the insiders to write it back up. So the average person in 2008 lost all their wealth in real estate. And then what the government did is they printed all these trillions of dollars, gave it to all these funds to buy up all these real estates, and they bought it all up at dirt cheap because we lost it all dirt cheap, and they wrote it all the way back up. So the wealth that most people had, they lost it, it went to the bankers, and then they wrote it back up. So that's the wealth transfer that I'm talking about. So you're kind of right. The wealth was destroyed, but through the policies, they caused the crash in the first place, and then they caused it to go back up, but in different hands. Does that make sense? So,
yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think so. Mark, we have a rare but relevant. I mean, it's a relevant, which is rare question from the chat from Greg Saj. What percentage of real estate value is attributable to QE and the Cantillian effect, in your opinion?
What percentage of real estate is value in? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say to either. I mean, it's attributed to inflation. So I mean, QE isn't necessarily inflationary, right? So QE, quantitative easing, the Federal Reserve puts reserves onto the bank's books, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the money supply increases. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have inflation. So it's attributed to inflation. So, for example, people think that real estate was the best investment in the world. I could have bought a property for $100,000. It's worth $500,000 today. But when you look at real estate over a 40-year lens or whatever, and you adjust it for inflation, it's only just been keeping up with inflation. It hasn't really been beating it. So I would say it's mostly attributed to inflation, not necessarily QE. Now, to the Cantillian effect, for those that don't know, the Cantillian effect is basically the people at the top get the money first. So, for example, the Fed gives the money to the banks first. So the banks have first access to that money for the cheapest. So they can go buy up all that real estate, as I kind of made that case. Then the banks will eventually loan it out to the big corporations. They get it the next, and they get it for the next cheapest. Then it goes to the rich people. And then eventually, somewhere down the line, it gets to us, and we get it for the most expensive, and we get it last after all the prices already raised back up. That's what the Cantillian effect is. So some of it for sure is Cantillian effect, and the rest of it's just inflation.
Right. So, Mark, I know we have about 20 minutes left. So I want to go into what...
It goes quick. It goes quick.
Sorry?
It goes quick.
Especially when you're having fun and you're getting cool knowledge to come out here. I hear an echo on myself. I hope that's going away. So let's get into, because that's what interests us as Bitcoiners. How dangerous to the dollar do you think this falling trust is? Where do you see the dollar heading, and where do you see this whole thing play out with Bitcoin? Do you believe that Bitcoin will replace US dollar as global reserve currency? Do you think it'll become money of the world? What's the phases and the timelines, if you believe so? And what do you think is going to happen with the dollar now with this withdrawal?
So a couple points. So the death of the dollar, what's going to happen to the dollar, all those things. It's a little bit of a nuanced argument. So for most of us, or I guess depending on where you are in the world, we price everything in our currency. So everything's priced in US dollars. So yeah, real estate's up in US dollars, but really it's just the US dollars are worth less and it takes more to buy those things. All right. So it's like a nuanced argument, and it's a different way of thinking. So when we talk about the dollar losing value, we look losing value compared to what? Well, all three stock indexes are at all-time highs. Gold's at all-time high. Bitcoin's at all-time high. Real estate's at all-time high. My bicycle, my mountain bike, the boats and RVs, they're all at all-time highs. So the dollar is already losing value. It's lost value to everything. Now, is it holding up against other currencies? Sure, maybe, but who cares? I don't want to purchase other currencies. So I like to think of things in terms of purchasing power. Right? Purchasing power. And so I believe that we're going to continue to see the dollar lose purchasing power. It will continue to lose value against gold and Bitcoin and real estate, et cetera. But it might get stronger to all the other currencies. Like Brent Johnson has the dollar milkshake theory, where the dollar will get stronger compared to every currency and suck every other currency in. And that's fine. The dollar may become the strongest currency in the, well, it already is, but it may continue to be the strongest and suck every other currency in. But that doesn't mean that its purchasing power will go up against gold and Bitcoin and real estate and all those other things. So it's a nuanced argument, and a lot of people don't understand that. We can have inflation and deflation at the same time. Now, what kind of time frame are we looking at? I mean, we're obviously seeing this, right? It's lost 50% of its purchasing power to Bitcoin in the last 60 days, right? So it's happening very rapidly. Bitcoin's kind of eating the world, as Raoul Paul puts it, right? If you price anything in Bitcoin, it's losing value. And again, that's where it's like everything's like, what's it valued in? If it's valued in Bitcoin, it's all losing value. So that answered the first question. I forget what the second part of the question was.
Yeah, to be honest, I just threw a lot at you to get as much out of you as possible. But do you see the US dollar working its way into a complete failure?
So it's interesting. So things are changing really, really fast. A couple of weeks ago, the IMF came out and called for something, the Bretton Woods 2. All right. And so in order to understand what Bretton Woods 2 is, you have to understand what Bretton Woods 1 is. Now, just a quick shout out, in about 15 minutes, I got a video dropping on my channel where I kind of dig into this specifically. But basically what Bretton Woods 1 is where the whole world came together and agreed on a one world currency, if you will. The dollar would be backed by gold, and all the other currencies of the world would be backed by the dollar, or pegged, I should say, pegged to the dollar. So the whole world agreed to one unit system, right? And then in 1971, Nixon severed that, and basically every currency went on their own, and everything's kind of moving independently. So Bretton Woods 2 is basically asking for everything to come back together under a one world currency. So what the IMF is basically asking for is the IMF wants to create a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, that could potentially compress the entire stack. So the IMF, central bank digital currency, could be sent directly to me and you. No more the need for the U.S. government, the U.S. Federal Reserve, my local bank, and then me. They could just send it directly to me. So it's hard to say where the world is going. I would say that the U.S. dollar doesn't die and disappear, at least not for the foreseeable future, 10, 20 years. I believe it just starts to lose relevance. And you had asked the question earlier, do I think like Bitcoin could become the new reserve standard or take the place of the dollar? I don't necessarily know if that is going to be the case. I can't really imagine how any government would ever decide to use Bitcoin as their standard, as their reserve currency. Bitcoin is for us. It's the people. It's our money. It's how we store our wealth. It's how we can transfer money. For the government to decide, hey, we're going to live on a budget now. We're going to go ahead and adopt Bitcoin. Like, why would they ever do that? So I think we'll probably continue to see currencies out there. Just like today, we have hundreds of currencies today, and I don't think that will change. But what I like is competition, and I like that the Bitcoin can compete against the other currencies, and you and I can decide for ourselves which one we want to hold, which one we can use. And of course, Bitcoin will eat the world, and all those currencies will probably still exist, but they'll just become diminished. That would be my guess.
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess that is the future that all of us are speculating about, especially Bitcoiners. Personally, I think that money will go to one vortex, and that will be Bitcoin.
It doesn't necessarily work like that, right? So like there is a winner for sure. There's a winner, right? Like gold won. So for thousands of years, there was all different types of money, shells and feathers and this and that. And gold won. China tried to keep silver for a long time, and they lost a lot of money. And eventually, gold won, right? But that didn't mean no one else used any other form of money anywhere in the world. You see what I'm saying? And I believe Bitcoin will win in the sense that it holds value better than anything else. It grows fast. It grows purchasing power faster than anything else. I think it wins for sure. But that doesn't mean people still won't be using other things as money.
Right. I do want to bring Pubby in here so he gets a chance to ask questions before we out. But I want to push back a little bit. When gold was money of the world, as far as I understand, it was sitting on like 99% of the global monetary value when it was gold. Silver was a tiny, tiny bit because gold was simply so valuable that if you were buying something cheaper, you couldn't make gold small enough, it would become dust, and then you lose your money. It can disappear in the wind. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to hear your insights. But as far as I understood, pretty much up until fiat currency was forced upon us, at gunpoint, and gold was confiscated, gold was a dominating money. The seashells was before that.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And like I said, gold did win for sure. But I guess it depends, right? There's several attributes of money. So, I mean, if we want to kind of break it down, like we have the store of value case, we have the medium of exchange case, we have the unit of account case, et cetera. And so I think that, for example, gold could definitely win and become the unit of account, the best store of value, but I might still choose to store my value in real estate and collector cars and fine art as well. You see what I'm saying? So even though the majority of my wealth might be stored in Bitcoin, I'm also going to store my wealth in a beach house and a collector's car and fine art too.
Stock or whatever. I totally agree with that. But
and then on medium of exchange, money communicates value, right? So there's lots of ways that I can communicate value. So for example, hey, how about I trade you this mug for the mug you're using? All of a sudden, that's money. So there will always still be barter. There will still be other forms of money. I think it wins, and it's the majority, and maybe it's 90%, like you said. But I just like all these altcoins that are out there, like they'll probably never, like they're all going to be there. They'll never be used, but they're there, and they're all going to lose money or whatever. But I think Bitcoin wins. It's the best store of value. It accrues value faster. It holds value better. It becomes the unit of account. It becomes the best store of value in the world. But people's like variety. I like variety. I'm still going to put value into other places. And so, like I said, it wins the unit of account for sure. It needs to. It has to. It has to. We have one of the biggest problems that we have is we have no standard unit of account. Imagine, as I said, I used to build a bunch of real estate. Imagine if I was going to build this project, and I was going to bring all these people together, architects and engineers and builders, but we didn't know what a foot was. Nobody knew what a foot was. Like, how the heck am I going to build a house without knowing what a foot is? And so everything in the world has these standard units of account. And right now we don't have that. So gold was that. We lost that. And that's why all the currencies are moving. So we have to get back to a unit of account. I think Bitcoin wins that for sure. So anyway.
I think we agree a lot more than I initially thought, because yes, of course, you will have investments, you will store your wealth, you'll have, basically investments and savings placed other places. And we're probably agreeing that Bitcoin could be the main money. PUBLORD, I am thrilled to have you here, and I want you to dive in with some of your questions for Mark, because that's important and it's gold. Let's go.
Are you sure you don't have another question first? Oh, all right. Okay. Oh, yeah. Hey, guys. Yeah, but the one thing I found interesting because, and Breedlove talked about this, or if you ever read about King Leopold and going down and going into the Congo and trading out all those pricey beads was, yeah, everyone had a local currency because what's interesting to me is with those beads, with those local currencies, you didn't have technology that could bring in anything else. So I was just going to say it's fascinating that gold only became the standard of those beads is with the advent of technology, the technology that brings in these different cultures to meet and interact. Mark, I remember reading and hearing you, I think you talk about trust in a currency. You may have already talked about this when I was having some technical difficulties there, and talking about trust in the US dollar falling so quickly, which is quite interesting. If it's falling this quickly, of course, now the three of us can talk about how we believe Bitcoin is a backstop to that. If it's falling this quickly, what replaces the US dollar if it doesn't get to Bitcoin? What is that stopgap? Because it seems to me if it's falling this quickly, I don't know if Bitcoin is ready for that part of it yet.
Yeah, so we did talk about that, and I talked about how it takes forever to build trust, and then trust can be lost in an instant. So we're definitely losing trust. We've been studying that for decades, and we can see how it's continuing to decline. And it's like anything, I think it's like gradually and then suddenly. And so we want to be positioned before that happens, not after, because after it happens, it's too late. But to your point, I just don't know. I just don't know if the dollar goes away. Like the government's still going to be there. The IRS is still going to tell you have to pay in dollars. That's fine, but I won't use it. All my money is in Bitcoin, right? But when it comes time to pay taxes, I'll exchange a little bit of Bitcoin back for US dollars and I'll submit them to US dollars. So I think that the smart people like us, like there's only so many lifeboats out there. Like the ship is sinking. There's only so many lifeboats. And like, I'm in the lifeboat now. You guys are in the lifeboat. How many other people get in that lifeboat and win? And at some point, maybe at some point the ship sinks, but it hits bottom and a little bit continues to stick up and it never goes down. So it's a sunk ship. It's ruined. Nobody really wants it or wants to use it, but it's like still there.
So yeah, no, I absolutely understand. Is there a point? I mean, I think the U.S. dollar, like you say, there in some form will always be there. But is there? Like I remember, I think I read up a bit on the Shanghai Accord you had mentioned. What is the stopgap until there's such a gap between the U.S. dollar as a non-backed currency and the greatest store of value and hardest currency in the world called Bitcoin? At what point, where does the world go if you don't trust the U.S. dollar? Where do you go?
Well, where do I go? I've gone into Bitcoin, right?
No. The world economy. Where does it go if they don't trust the dollar?
Well, I think it depends on what time frame you're looking at. So, are we looking at 100 years? Or are we looking at 5 years? So these things, they happen over time. So, as I kind of made the case, like no government is going to agree to live on a budget. Like they're never going to do that willingly. They'll only do that forcefully. So I believe they're going to try a couple different things. As I mentioned, the IMF is probably going to create this SDR basket, central bank digital currency, like a Facebook Libra type situation where, the IMF already runs SDRs, or special drawing rights. That's a basket of currencies. So they're going to create a central bank digital currency. Each country will probably still keep theirs, and they're going to try to keep this charade going. More and more people will be exiting like us. And that's obviously what we're here trying to do, is get people to know, hey, you better get on the lifeboat. But I think this happens over a long period of time. They're going to keep trying to save it and reinvent this currency. And they're going to try MMT, and they're going to try all these phony things that will never work. The system is doomed to fail. The system is doomed to fail. It's when. So I believe it's inevitable. The fiat currency will always fail, always. But it's how long can they keep the charade going? So I guess that's the question. So I think they're going to keep trying to go. More and more people like us will keep waking up and leaving and leaving and leaving and leaving. And I would imagine they're going to try to keep it going in this as long as they possibly can. If you're trying to ask me, like, if I could guess, when would people finally be done with fiat currency and have to go to like a Bitcoin or a gold, some sort of a sound money? I mean, it could be 40, 50 years.
Well, no, it's not so much when because we all know it fails. All fiat fails. And
Yeah.
so my question is, the U.S. dollar, they're losing trust in it. But isn't it? It's just losing trust, I think, at a slower rate than every other fiat. You can't really go. We're sort of everyone in the world, like you talked about Bretton Woods. We're all pegged to the dollar. You know, they can lose trust all they want, but there's no, aside from Bitcoin, there's nowhere else to go.
Right. You're absolutely right. So I mean, obviously, I know there's the gold and Bitcoin debate, and that rages on. I think that, you know, Bitcoin is eating gold. We know that. We can see the charts. It's obvious. Gold has barely kept up with inflation. I mean, the money supply has grown exponentially, and gold has barely gotten back to its all-time high. So gold is not keeping up. Bitcoin is eating it. We know that, and that's factual. However, gold does have 5,000 years of experience. We know all the central banks own gold, and so that doesn't just go away overnight. It's starting to go away pretty quickly, and we've seen that. I've done videos where we can see that people are selling gold ETFs, and that money is moving into Bitcoin Trust, like Grayscale Trust, and so we can see there's a shift happening. We can see that the younger generations, the millennials, are going to Bitcoin, where the older generations are still hanging on to gold. We can see this, but it's a shift. But eventually, Bitcoin wins. I mean, it is the best. Yeah. It is the best money for a million reasons why. A million reasons why Bitcoin is the best, and it eventually wins for sure.
So we sometimes have a discussion here on what Bitcoin is truly designed for. Because to me, right now, I'm in the sailor camp of, dude, it's a store of value for at least 10 to 20 years. For me, I don't understand why anyone would use it as a medium of exchange until it goes up.
No way. Don't spend your Bitcoin. Spend your fiat.
No, man.
Fiat's designed to be spent. You know what I mean? Not Bitcoin. So I think there's an evolution to it, and this is where a lot of people have problems. So there's a process. So Bitcoin starts as, and this is how lots of things start. They start as a collectible. Oh, that's kind of cool. I'll collect it. And then when a collectible gets big enough, it becomes a store of value. So right now, fine art is a store of value for a lot of billionaires. Old cars are actually, they were collectibles, but today they're actually stores of value for billionaires. So you evolve. You go from a collectible, then you evolve to a store of value. Then you evolve to that medium of exchange, and eventually you evolve to that unit of account. So a lot of people make this mistake when they come in and go, oh, Bitcoin's not a store of value. Okay, well, it maybe isn't today, but that doesn't mean that it won't be. I've used the analogy a bunch of times. It's like if you looked at LeBron James when he was 5 years old, he'll never play basketball. Look at him. He's a little kid. How is he going to be the best basketball player in the world? At 5, you could say that. At 12, you might go, shoot, this kid has some potential. He's not the best basketball player, but he has potential. At 16, you're like, dude, this kid's going to be the next world or the MVP or whatever, right? So like over time, they evolve and you start getting more and more conviction along the way. That's kind of how I look at it. Just because it's not a medium exchange or the best store value today doesn't mean it won't be. The properties that it has tell us that it will become that. Just like if I looked at LeBron James' parents and his genealogy, and I might go, shoot, well, based off his parents, I could tell. And so we know that Bitcoin has everything it needs to become all those things.
And I think it already, it may not be store of value for the world yet, but it is for some people. It is for some corporations like MicroStrategy. And what we're seeing is that it's expanding. More and more people are using it as, hey, I don't want my fiat to lose value. Let me get Bitcoin and MicroStrategy as well. I know we have very little time left, Mark, and so I really want to ask you about where do you see this Bitcoin bull run go? How high do you think it'll come in terms of US dollar and like any timing expectations? And on top of that, add your plug and tell everyone about your podcast and what you're about to go live with, please.
Yeah, so I just want to add one more thing on that store of value argument. So everything comes down to these time frames, right? And so when I say long term, what is long term to me? What is long term to you, right? So we all these different time frames in our head. So if you want to say Bitcoin as a store of value, if you look at the low every single year, the lowest point on Bitcoin every single year, it's been up every single year except for one. In 2015, it was a little bit lower. So as a store of value on an annual basis, it's actually been the best store of value. Since 2010, the dollar has lost 20% of its purchasing power per CPI. It's lost way more than that. In real estate, it's lost 50%. In Bitcoin, it's lost 90%. But per CPI, it's lost 20% since 2010. But Bitcoin, every single year, the lowest point has been higher. So there's that. I just want to add that. So it is a pretty good store of value if you have the right time frame.
I was going to just say that's per CPI, which we know is all rigged anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I said, per real estate or per gold or per Bitcoin, it's lost way more than that. The other thing that I'd like to say is, though, even though I said, maybe we live in this world where there's multiple forms of money and multiple stores of value, that Bitcoin is way bigger than that to me. So Bitcoin is way bigger than the money argument. And I think that we're already losing trying to argue that because it puts Bitcoin into a box. In my opinion, Bitcoin is the only thing that saves this world. The only thing. Yeah. And let me tell you why, because this is a really big deal. We are moving into a totalitarian nightmare. Technology has gotten to the point where it is completely enslaved us. It raises us with AI telling us what to think. It censors news. It locks us down. In China, the social credits, all these things. We are moving into a world where technology will just enslave us. And why would that change, right? Some people just want to control other people. These governments, now that they've realized they can control us and enslave us and just suck us dry of money, they're going to continue to do that. All right. So I don't see how that stops. We have already seen the political process isn't going to work. I believe the only way this changes, the only thing that breaks this grip of totalitarian nightmare, okay? Free market competition. When the U.S. becomes so totalitarian that you can't even, go outside without a mask on or whatever, another country is going to say, hey, you can come over here. You can live free. You can have a business. You can do whatever you want for work. You can go to the beach with your family. And people are going to want to go there, right? And then another country is going to be like, wait, all the rich people are going there. Well, hey, you can come free over here. More people go there. And eventually countries start competing. Now, the reason why this is why Bitcoin is the most important thing ever. Now, when I was a kid, I'm old. I may not look old, but I'm old. I had friends whose families came from Iran, Afghanistan. One of my best friends' families came from South Africa. When they came to the U.S., they came penniless. They couldn't bring their gold. They couldn't bring their real estate. They couldn't get their money out of the bank. Okay? Yeah. Bitcoin is the only thing that changes that. The only thing. So I can have my 12-word phrase in my head. I can go naked to another country, plug it in, and I can have all my wealth. And that is what will speed up this competition that we need. And I believe the competition is the only thing that breaks the grip of totalitarianism. So this is not an argument about the best money. This is an argument that Bitcoin is the only thing that gives us hope of freedom and sovereignty in the world that we're facing today.
Yeah, I listened to your podcast with Raul, and I think he talked about he's walking his dogs on the beach and saw the Cuban migrants coming in. And you talked about how, you're coming in, but you've got absolutely nothing. And that was the one thing that appealed to me the most about Bitcoin was, wait a second, there's an asset class that is literally has no physicality that can be taken from you. Yeah, I'm all in. That's the first thing that I saw. I was like, this shit's for me. I am all in here.
Yeah. So it enables that competition, which is what when countries start to realize like, holy crap, I can't just put them into slavery. If I don't compete, I'm going to lose everybody. So that does that, and that's what allows that to happen. But it also defunds them, right? It also chops their knees out from under them by taking the money out of their system. So that's why I think it's the best. So for me, the next thing we'll go into real quick, I do have to wrap it up, is you wanted to ask me where it goes in the future. And I would just say that I know this might sound crazy, but I don't really focus on that much. And the reason why is because I believe that Bitcoin is the only thing that frees us in the future. And so whether it ever goes up in value or not, I don't really care. I want to know that I can keep my wealth out of the hands of the government that's censorship resistant. And whether it ever goes up in value, I don't care. Now, that being said, That being said, I can easily see it going to, you know, $100,000 easily. And the reason why I say that is we know gold is $10 trillion or more, and it beats gold. Okay. But what a lot of people don't realize is Bitcoin's a lot of things. Sure. It's a better store of value like gold is, right? Well, it's also like a Swiss bank account in your pocket. So there's 30 to 40 trillion dollars sitting in offshore bank accounts. Wouldn't you think a big chunk of that 30 to 40 trillion comes in?
Yeah.
So we got 10 trillion in gold. We got 30 to 40 trillion in offshore. That's $50 trillion right there. Just in those two assets, if we could just pull 10% off, that's $5 trillion. Now, $5 trillion of actual wealth coming in pushes the market cap up multiples. I mean, now we're like, I mean, I don't even want to say it, but it's like now we're at like $50 trillion market cap. I mean, it starts getting crazy. So I would give it to, you know, the Citibank and the JP Morgans and the ARK. I mean, they're saying, you know, 300 grand. I definitely see that. Raoul Paul said it could be $1 million. I definitely see that as well. For me, I'm trying to stay, I've been in this for quite a while and I've been through some crazy ups and downs. So I try to stay even keeled. I try not to get too excited when it goes up because I don't want to get too depressed when it goes down. I think if it goes to 100,000 in the next 4 years, I'd be extremely happy. I think that's extremely conservative. And I think we'll get there.
4 years. You're a perma bear now, my friend.
No. I'm saying if that's extremely conservative.
Yes, it is.
And if but if it did that, I would be happy. So I think those calls for 300,000, 400,000 are totally realistic. I think over the next couple of years, we could easily suck a couple, you know, 3, 5, 10% from those two asset classes I mentioned.
Yeah.
Where it can go is astronomical. And obviously, as the dollar continues to lose value, that also pushes Bitcoin up higher as well.
Do you have a good number on the bond market? Because you talk about the trillions. I think I saw somewhere 17 trillion, 20 trillion just in negative yielding bonds.
I mean, last I saw it was like 18 trillion in negative yielding bonds. And so basically what that means is you're guaranteed to lose money. So what that literally means is there's $18 trillion that are literally worth less than zero.
Yeah. And that's the money that is going to be pouring in here soon.
Yeah. So so all that's going to be pouring in, and it already is. I mean, we're already starting to see this, and it's starting to come in way faster than I think many imagined.
Anders, you got something?
No, yeah, I'm enjoying you two talking, and to be honest, the last 20 minutes, me and the chat have been enjoying. There's comments like Mark is flying, Mark is finishing strong. They didn't realize they were watching Toxic Happy Hour on 1.5 speed because you've been throwing the gold at us, Mark, and we really appreciate it. I do apologize for the technical difficulties. On that note, since I know you're in California, I owe you a steak dinner because of what we had to drag you through here. Which part of California are you?
I'm in Southern California, right in between LA and San Diego, but I'm out of here. I'm going to Puerto Rico in 2 weeks, so catch me out there.
You are moving permanently?
I'm gonna give it a year. We'll see how it goes.
All right. I could be gone next year as well, but it is what it is. Mark, thank you so very much. Please give us your sorry, Pubby, but Mark, I know he has to go, so give us your chills, and I will within an hour update all the show notes below, so we got the proper links. I have your YouTube channel, I have your Twitter, everything. Mark, please take it away.
Yeah, I mean, if you like this type of content, I put it out a couple times a week. Just go to YouTube and type in Mark Moss, and then I'm pretty active on Twitter. Maybe too active. It's hard to get any work done, but the number one Mark Moss on Twitter. Find me there, ask me questions, and I'd love to connect with everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Poppy, final words from you, and Mark, appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
No, it was great. You know, I first met Mark a couple weeks ago on a Bitcoin Magazine happy hour there with CK Snarks, but that was a great time, and yeah, he was gracious enough to say, hey, yeah, I'll come on the happy hour, have a drink with you guys, talk some Bitcoin. So yeah, apologies again from my side on the technical difficulties, but hey, that's life in the pub. But thanks for coming, man.
Yeah.
Fun times, guys. We'll have to do it again.
Thank you. Okay, we'll hold you up on that.
Yep.
That is now
Yep.
timestamped. We got you. All right.
All right.
See you, Mark. See you, everyone out there. Thanks for watching. And the final note: please remember, do not store more value in fiat currency that you're willing to lose. It's a built-in policy. It's gonna happen. Not financial advice, just friendly advice. Mark, thank you. Sorry.
Thank